tie in to what we're talking about. So, welcome everyone. I'm Lisa Hammett, and I call me a mental fitness expert. Basically, I'm a certified PQ coach, and basically, what that is I help individuals manage stress and other negative emotions in the moment so that they can navigate challenges with ease and remain calm, clear-headed, laser-focused, and live their best life. Pretty cool.
So, and you did a great job of modeling that for us.
Right? Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I hope I still have everybody with me. So I want to give a little backstory about myself and is why I am so passionate about this topic. So back in, let's see, actually it was 2005, after a 26-year career in the corporate retail sector, I reached burnout. And I equate it to slamming into a cement wall. I was done. I had no more mental bandwidth to continue on my current course. I was 65 pounds overweight. I was suffering from chronic migraines, digestive issues. My marriage was strained. And I remember waking up one morning and the world just looked gray, devoid of color. And I knew at that moment that I had hit rock bottom. So in a moment of desperation, I left a long-term career at a high salary without an exit strategy, which resulted in bankruptcy down the road. And I share all of this with you to say that had I done a better job managing my stress, I could have prevented everything. Had I known then what I know now, I would have had the tools to, I can't say I'm going to never have stress again, but I could certainly mitigate it in the moment. And I would have prevented a departure and that eventually led to burnout. So I don't know where you are. I would hope that none of you are experiencing burnout in the degree that I experienced it. But if you are experiencing chronic stress, and some of the symptoms of chronic stress are maybe tension headaches, that just are always there, or indigestion, or maybe you're not sleeping. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep. These are all warning signs that something needs to change. So as we go through this, I want you to just kind of make a mental note of any of those warning signs that could be presenting an issue. All right. So what is mental fitness? So by definition, mental fitness is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset. And the impact of this is you have peak performance, you're highly productive in whatever you're doing, you have greater peace of mind and well-being, and you have healthier relationships because you have improved communication. Now, to really understand how mental fitness works, we have to understand how both sides of our brain work. And we do have two sides. We have the left analytical side, which was designed for problem solving, one task at a time. And where we tend to get in trouble is when we are juggling too many things at the same time. Do I have any multitaskers on the call tonight? Anybody? Just shout out if you're a multitasker.
Yes, all day, every day.
All day, every day, right?
The other way.
Right. So what happens when you are juggling all these different balls in the air and more balls just keep getting thrown at you? What will eventually happen?
Balls are getting dropped.
Yes. And how do you emotionally feel when you start dropping balls?
Stressed, overwhelmed, just inadequate, honestly.
Yeah. All of the above. And those are all great examples of just some of the many negative emotions that we experience. Now, all of our negative emotions bubble up from Most of them are in our subconscious. And actually, we have over 70,000 thoughts a day, which is crazy. And most of them are repetitive. So we're not even aware that we are having them. But because they bubble up again from our subconscious, they can do a lot of damage. And we start to form these strong neural pathways in our brain if we are consistently experiencing these negative thoughts. So, in essence, what I'm saying is we are negatively programming our brain to focus on the negative, which makes it very hard to have a positive thought some days. And when we allow ourselves to stay in those negative thoughts, it can prevent us from having, strong performance, being happy, healthy, fulfilled, successful, having quality relationships. It can cause a lot of problems. So in the positive intelligence space, which is where mental fitness came about, the negative emotions that you had mentioned, Miriam, and then the corresponding behavior that often goes with those are attached to what we call saboteur traits. And there are 10 of those. And we're going to talk about those in detail here in a moment. But before we do that, I just want to quickly mention the right side of our brain, which is our sage brain, or you could think of it as your happy brain. And this is where you experience all those positive emotions like empathy and happiness and fulfillment and curiosity and clear-headed laser focus. And I want you to recall, if you can, a day where you emotionally and physically just felt fantastic. You were energized. The conversations that you were having with individuals were engaging. You were highly productive. It was just a really good day. Can you recall a day like that? I'm hearing crickets, which is kind of scary. Does that mean nobody has ever had a day like that?
Not in history.
Not a very long time. Well, that is an example of you swimming in the right side of your brain, which is your sage brain or your positive brain. And that's ideally where we need to be operating most of the time. But again, all of those negative saboteur thoughts and behaviors often prevent us from doing so. Now, when we are navigating from that right side of our brain, we have 5 sage powers that can help us navigate challenges. We're actually not going to spend really any time on that today, but I want to just let you know that they exist. And if you have any questions at the end of the presentation, or if you'd like to have a conversation beyond this, I can certainly share the sage powers. All right, so let's talk about our saboteurs. I know there's a lot of information on this slide. So again, these behaviors are attached to those negative emotions that we experience. And as I'm going through these, I want you to just think about the ones that really resonate with you. And towards the end of the presentation, you're going to have an opportunity to take a really brief assessment. And as a thank you for doing that, you will have an opportunity to get a link to this saboteur assessment so that you can determine what your top saboteur traits are. But I would guarantee that as I go through these, you're going to have a pretty good understanding as to which ones bubble up to the top. So overseeing all of the saboteurs is the judge. Now, the judge not only judges us with those self-deprecating thoughts like I'm not good enough, I could never be successful, this could never happen for me, all that negative mind trash, which is not truth. But unfortunately, we have these repetitive thoughts that are negative. They form those neural pathways. So we start to believe these thoughts, even though they're not true. Now, the judge also judges others. And we don't like to say that we judge others, but we do it all the time. We could be judging what somebody's wearing or maybe their political belief. And the thing is, we may never vocalize those judgmental thoughts, but we have them nonetheless, and they can be very toxic. And then the judge will also judge circumstances. So have you ever had one of those days? Well, kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the presentation that it was a Monday. Let's just say, yes, it was a Monday. And what about that Monday was challenging? What judgmental thoughts may come into play when you think about your Monday? Any thoughts?
I'm trying to let other people answer.
Don't be afraid. You can answer. Well, the judge would say that a situation is bad. So let's just say maybe you're short-staffed. Maybe you just have a lot of projects that you're trying to complete. Maybe there were some problems that arose, or I should say challenges, and it just felt like this big storm of things. And your judge in situations like that would say, this situation is bad. It's bad, and that's all there is to it. Which, when we focus again on the bad, we attract more bad. So that's the way the judge can impact us, by judging us, judging others, and judging circumstances. Now, excuse me, swallowed wrong. Okay, so let's talk about our accomplice saboteurs. Goodness, excuse me. Let's talk about the stickler. So are there anybody on the call tonight who is a want-to-be perfectionist? Anybody?
Yes, my sister, who's on this call. She's texting me because her mic won't turn on.
Oh, that's funny. We're just having all kinds of technical issues, aren't we? Well, our little saboteurs are being activated tonight.
Yes, definitely.
So the stickler is in constant need for perfection and order. And the stickler gets very anxious when things can't be done in a particular way. It's very stressful. And they can generate a lot of stress for others as well if they hold others to those unrealistic expectations. Now, the thing about the stickler is attention to detail is not a bad thing. You know, there are certain things that we have to pay close attention to, especially if it's, confidential records or, data of some sort. So again, attention to detail is not a bad thing, but holding yourself to unrealistic perfectionistic standards and holding others to those standards, that can be problematic. And then we have the pleaser. Now, the pleaser has the great quality that they're highly empathetic. And empathy is a great quality for any sort of relationship. Because if you can't empathize with somebody else, it may be challenging to have that connection with that person. Now, the pleaser, yes, they're empathetic, but they are constantly putting others' needs before their own. And what happens when you're constantly giving to other people and you're not getting anything in return? How does that make you feel?
Your cup is empty.
Yes. And then eventually you can't pour from an empty cup, and there might even be some resentment in there as well after a while. So the pleaser can, feel depleted. And then we have the victim. And the victim can also be empathetic, and they're also very self-aware, which is a great quality if you anticipate being in any sort of physical danger. However, the victim wants others to feel emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention and affection. So basically, they want others to be empathetic and caring towards them, but they use the wrong way to go about it. And they play that victim card, like, oh gosh, everything is bad. My life is so hard. Everything is difficult. Everything that can happen that is negative in life will happen to me. And after a while, when you're around somebody like that, you might have a little sympathy for them at the beginning, but after a while, you're like, okay, bye-bye. I just don't want to be around you because they suck the life out of you. Then we have the hyperachiever, and this actually is one of my top saboteur traits, so you'll learn a little more about me. The hyperachiever actually can be very successful, but they're not always happy because they're so focused on their performance and their productivity. In fact, they're one of those individuals, and yes, I am this person, that loves lists and has to cross off things on a list. And I've even gone so far as to write down something that I have already accomplished and crossed it out to just feel like I have accomplished more. Can that be relatable to anybody here?
Hand.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So, it's great that you're goal driven and focused so you can be successful. But I'll tell you, if you have a strong hyperachiever tendency, and it is not controlled, you're on a fast train to burnout. And I can attest because that happened to me. It's one of the top saboteur traits that actually leads to burnout. Okay, the hyperrational. So the hyperrational is very intelligent. They're very left brain dominant, very data driven. They could be a medical doctor or a CPA or an attorney, just giving broad examples. Again, very smart, but where they struggle is with empathy, because to the hyperrational, empathy or emotions are messy and they detract from the business at hand. So the hyperrational is one of those individuals that if you were to ask them to prepare a presentation, and if it was a slide presentation, they'd have like 500 slides. Or if you ask them to put together a proposal, they would turn in a manuscript because there would be so much data in there. And it's just the analysis paralysis. And they do that because they feel that it validates what they are sharing, and that, data does not lie. It can support everything. So, this again can make having relationships, empathetic relationships with others, difficult. And then we have the hypervigilant. And the hypervigilant is also very self-aware, like the victim. And, if you're a paramedic, a first responder, a firefighter, having vigilance is very important because you could be in danger often. But the hypervigilant goes to the extreme, whereas they're that individual that is always worried that something bad is going to happen. And have you ever been around somebody who is always paranoid that something bad is going to happen?
Yes, also my sister.
Yes. How does it make you feel when you're around somebody like that?
Maybe that I am not worrying enough. But also just like, anxious where I wasn't anxious before.
Right, exactly. And that is an example of what we call a saboteur contagion. And basically what that means is an individual's saboteurs are infecting somebody else's. So that is an example of how we can negatively impact the behavior of others. And then we have the restless, and the restless is very interesting because they are not afraid to try new things. They're fearless. They love excitement, and they gravitate towards anything shiny and new and interesting. And they're just juggling a lot of different things. They might be a fantastic idea generator. They can think outside the box, and they're just always busy doing things because they like that excitement. But when things become routine and becomes a little boring and that excitement factor has gone away, they're done, they're out. And they often leave a trail of unfinished projects and maybe hobbies that they started and they did not continue with. So that's the restless. And then we have the controller. Now, the controller has this anxiety-based need to really take charge and control in situations. And they get very anxious if they're not in control because they honestly believe that others want them in control, because if they're not in control, then things won't get done well or they won't get done at all. Now, I don't want to say that control is a bad thing. For you parents, when you have small children, you have got to exercise control or boundaries, because that's how you teach your children right from wrong. You know, you can't just let them run around and do whatever they want, because they could get into trouble or they could hurt themselves. So again, control is not a bad thing. And if you're running a business or, you know, you're overseeing a project, you know, you have to exercise some sort of control. But the extreme becomes that micromanager. Has anybody here ever worked for a micromanager in the past?
I currently do, yes.
Oh, that's rough. That's rough. Yeah, and did you know that the number one reason, well, I shouldn't say the number one, but a very top reason why individuals leave organizations is because they have controllers as their supervisor.
Yes, definitely, because that's kind of your whole day working with
Exactly.
this person. Yeah.
Yeah, and you feel like, gosh, why am I even here? You know, I'm just like this little puppet. Yeah, it's not a good situation. And when I was in the corporate sector, I worked for several controllers, and yes, it was not good. Okay, and then lastly, let's talk about the avoider. Now, avoiding toxicity, what I mean is, you know, if you're scrolling social media or you're watching the news and you're feeling anxious, or there's certain environments or individuals that are just always negative, and you just really try to stay away from them because you want to, you know, control your energy, or at least maintain your energy, your positive energy. You know, avoidance of those things is fine. That's a good thing. But avoiding difficult conversations or tasks or environments that are uncomfortable is not the answer. Because what happens when we avoid a conversation with someone, and let's say there's been some irritation or some resentment or just, you know, little conflict that is just kind of percolating. What happens if you never have a conversation about it?
You grow more resentful.
You can, and then what eventually will happen if those emotions continue to build?
In my experience, it does just one day kind of all build up and blow up, and what could have been a calm conversation becomes a very dramatic one.
Yes, perfectly said. Perfectly said. And that's the perfect reason why you should not avoid tough conversations. They're necessary on occasion. Now, avoiding tasks that make us uncomfortable, okay, that's a sign of procrastination. Do I have any procrastinators in the audience? Anybody likes to procrastinate?
That is definitely something I struggle with.
Okay. Thank you for admitting that. You're not alone. And the number one reason actually why we procrastinate, sometimes people think it's because we're lazy. No, we're not inherently lazy. It's because we have a fear, an underlying fear of rejection. We are fearful that we won't show up as our best self. We're fearful that we won't complete the project correctly, or people will feel poorly of us. Or maybe it's linked to the stickler and we have this perfectionistic viewpoint that this has to be perfect. And if it can't be perfect, I'm not going to do it. So we avoid it.
I think I struggle with that explanation of it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's very common. Believe it or not, it's very common. And then also avoiding environments, for example, or putting yourself out there and doing things that might make you uncomfortable. The thing is, if we never push ourselves out of our comfort zone, we will stagnate, we will get bored, and then we will feel unfulfilled. And it's human nature to want things to be happy and comfortable, but after a while, they become very mundane and you feel unfulfilled. So our saboteurs overall, they motivate us through, again, those negative emotions like fear, anger, stress, overwhelm, shame, insecurity. Now, after going through all of these, which ones are resonating with you all? I'd love to hear.
Could you repeat that question one more time?
Yes, of these 10 saboteur traits that we just talked about, which ones resonate with you? Which ones do you're like, oh yeah, I have that one?
Me personally, I'm an avoider.
Okay.
I tend to avoid a lot. I just don't want to put myself out there mostly. But my child, she's also an avoider.
Okay.
I think she gets it from me, not sure, but I've seen a lot of that in her as well.
And it's possible. I mean, you're her role model, right? So she could be avoiding because maybe she doesn't feel safe. Who knows? Who knows? And that's it. And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because we develop these saboteur traits as children. And, we're not born with them. We don't have all of these attached to us. But as we go through life and unpleasant circumstances occur, then these saboteurs attach themselves, to us. And, they might serve us well as a small child, but as we go through life, they can become dysfunctional. So, any comments about this before we move on?
Question. I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I was kind of looking, it's like sometimes I'm an avoider, but then all of a sudden I switch over to hyperachiever when it gets down to,
Yes.
as Miriam goes.
And that's common. That's very common because that you have to get into hyperachiever mode if it's something that absolutely has to get done, right?
Yes. And it almost feels good to be in that mode, even though it's really distressing.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that double-edged sword. It generates a lot of stress that could have been eliminated had you maybe not avoided it for so long. But then there's this sense of relief and satisfaction that, oh, I'm actually doing it. I'm getting it done. So it's kind of that double-edged sword. But yeah, I totally get it. Those two work in tandem with each other often.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, something similar. I feel like I'm not just one. I feel like I'm a few combined. Like I feel like I'm a stickler, but it also bleeds into controller because I'm a stickler and I want perfection. So I control the situation and I'm not satisfied if I'm not controlling it because I want perfection. And then because I want perfection, if it's not going to be perfect, then I don't want to do it. So I'm an avoider. And I feel like I'm like, if you asked me to pick one, I would be.
Well, and I'm glad that you said that because we have all of these. We have every single one of them, even if some of them don't appear very often. but they're sneaky. Saboteurs are sneaky, and certain ones will show up at the strangest times, and you'll be like, oh, wow, okay. Like the victim, for example, a lot of people don't readily say, hey, I'm a victim, but hey, we've all played the victim card at one point. And I can recall when I was recovering from a surgery and it was painful and it was a slow recovery, I started to have that victim mindset, and I recognized it, fortunately, pretty quickly. But, the point being is they all rise to the occasion at some point. And if you work outside the home, or even if you have a job at home, the saboteurs that show up for you at work can be very different from the saboteurs that show up in your personal life. So kind of interesting. Any comments before we move on? Okay. Well, again, you're going to have an opportunity to take a survey at the end where you can actually do the saboteur assessment. So some of you have already described how your saboteurs are impacting you. Anybody else have any awareness of how certain saboteurs are showing up in certain areas? Please share. Don't be shy.
I'll say that within like my personal life, I would say my mother is a hyper rational like saboteur, especially when it comes to like, I don't know what it is. It's like she always has an A, B, C, D plan for anything that comes up.
Oh, that's funny. Well, and it's interesting when you can start to notice the saboteurs in others and notice how they must be feeling having that, that saboteur. And when we can recognize it in others, we can understand what the negative feelings or emotions that are attached to it, and we can empathize with people. So it's a good thing when we have a good grasp of not only what our saboteurs are, but especially those that we are in close proximity with. So yeah, that was a great share. Thank you. All right. Well, let's move on. So I talked about in the beginning, our left brain holds all of our saboteurs. And then we have the right, the sage brain, which is where we want to be swimming most of the time, because when challenges do arise, we can handle them with ease. We can remain calm, clear-headed, laser-focused. We can respond with empathy. Now, let's face it, there are just some days where it just feels like you're attacked by saboteurs all day long. It's just the way the day goes. And even though you might be aware of them and know that it's not helpful to be in that mindset and that you need to shift to that positive sage brain, how do you do it? Sometimes it's hard. So what I'm going to share with you now, really for the remainder of the presentation, is what we call PQ reps, which stand for positive quotients. And in essence, what they are, they're 10 to 15 second micro meditations that engage your senses. And these are things that we can do in the moment when we're starting to feel that saboteur influence. So they can encompass sight, sound, touch, your breath, and also taste. We're going to go through each of these in depth. So as I go through these, let's do these together so that you can understand how they work. So what I would like you to do is look at something in front of you. I don't care what it is. It can be what's on the screen. It could be something on the desk in front of you, something in the room that you're in. But I want you to stare at it as if you have never seen it before. And I want you to notice colors, shapes, maybe textures. Could be a reflection in the surface if there's a light shining on it. I just want you to notice those tiny details and just really stare at it for a few seconds and be very curious. And next, let's focus on something that you can hear. Now I'm talking, so clearly it could be the sound or the tone or an inflection of my voice, but it could also be a sound in your environment. Try to notice the farthest away sound that you can hear right now. It might be people talking in another room. Could be a car passing by outside. But notice the farthest away sound. And then notice the nearest sound that you can hear. And if you're in a really quiet space, it might be the sound of the HVAC system, if the air coming through the vent. Maybe you have a ceiling fan on. It could even be the sound of your breath. And then focus just for a moment on all the different sounds that you can hear and kind of make it almost like a game. Whereas, okay, what do I hear? Okay, I hear Lisa's voice. I hear somebody talking in the other room. I hear the fan. I hear maybe a television. I hear a pet walking down the hall. So just kind of, focus on all the different sounds. All right, and then the next one is touch. So I want you to either pick up something in front of you that is in front of you, or what you could do is you could rub your thumb and your index finger together. And I want you to do it very slowly. Now, if you have an object, I want you to pretend that you cannot see that object, and you're actually using your fingers to really try to identify what that object is. Are the edges sharp? Are they rounded? Is the surface smooth? What's the temperature? And if you're rubbing your index finger and your thumb, notice the fingertip ridges of your fingers. Are they dry? Are they smooth? What's the temperature of your fingertips? This is a really good one. I like doing this. Like if I'm in a situation around other people and you feel tension arising, or maybe you're in a confrontational situation, that's a really easy thing that you can do subtly. Just kind of rub your fingers tips together, and it does. It works. So we talked about that. Okay. So I want to ask you, when is the last time you actually paid attention to what you ate or drank? Really noticed what's the temperature? What's the texture? What are the different flavor profiles? And then what aroma is linked to that taste? When was the last time that you really paid attention to that? Can you recall?
I'm actively trying to not do that right now because I'm on a diet.
No.
It's funny you mentioned the taste, because today I came home this evening and my peaches that were not ripe, one of them was ripe, and it was just like pure heaven.
Oh, I bet.
The smell of it, and it was the perfect ripeness, and that was the best thing I've had to eat in a long time. And it was just kind of getting totally immersed in that whole taste and texture experience.
And it's great when you can experience that. And it seems kind of silly sometimes to think about, well, how is that, really shifting my stress? Well, because when you're focused on that, you're not thinking about all that negative mind trash that is generating any sort of stress or negative emotion. So, it's just a matter of being fully present. Now, I love coffee. And when I drink my coffee in the morning, I have a beautiful mug that I drink from. And so I feel the texture of the mug, and then I smell the aroma of the coffee, and then I take a sip and I savor the flavor. And then as I swallow, I feel the warmth, as I swallow. So it's really kind of a meditative experience. And I encourage you, the next time that you eat or drink something, to really pay attention to it. One, it might be just more enjoyable, but two, it will force you to kind of slow down. All right. Now, let's talk about the breath. Now, I'm sure that you have heard that, taking deep breaths and, focusing on the breath can be very therapeutic and meditative. Yes, it can. And here's why. And here's how it can become a PQ rep. So if you are really triggered, activated, anxious about something, your body goes into what we call fight or flight mode. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard of that term before. And that is your central nervous system basically being activated and believing that you are in real danger. So here's the thing about how our brains operate. Our brain cannot discern between real danger. Let's say you're sitting on the ground and then there's a lion that just all of a sudden appears in front of you. Okay, I know that's kind of ridiculous, but just go with me. And, it starts growling and it's a predator. And you're like, oh gosh, this is not a good situation. So your body would react because you're fearful that, oh gosh, I could get eaten by this lion. Well, our body can have that same response to when we get activated by stress or other negative emotions. It cannot discern the difference. Now, why the breath is so powerful is one of the symptoms when our body gets activated and goes into fight or flight is our heart starts racing. Our blood pressure elevates. We might even start sweating. If we're really hijacked, we might even be like shaking a little bit. And the breath can actually lower the heart rate when you breathe in and breathe out very slowly. And it resets the central nervous system. So ways that you can do this is notice the rise and fall of your chest or stomach. So take a slow, deep breath in and then slowly let it out. As you're doing that, you could put maybe your hand on your chest or stomach and just notice that rise and fall of your chest or stomach as you're doing that. Another thing that you could do when you're slowly breathing in and out is notice the temperature of the air as you inhale. And then notice the change in temperature as you exhale. Just taking these slow, deep breaths. So this is how the breath can be very helpful. And then just even noticing the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. If you put your hand on your chest and again, slow, deep breaths, and you're just feeling that steady rhythm of your heartbeat. So this is a really powerful thing that you can do. All right. So we have some time. What I would like for you to do is close your eyes. And I'm going to give you an example of just a kind of guided meditation that you could even do for yourself if you're feeling really stressed and you're in a place where you can just close your eyes for a moment. And maybe that's when your car is parked, or maybe before you start driving, or maybe if you're going to the bathroom, or if you have an office and you're able to just kind of close the door and be in an office or in a quiet space. Again, this isn't going to take a lot of time, but it can just give you an idea of some things that you can focus on. So with your eyes closed, I want you to take a nice, slow, deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Take another deep breath in through your nose. And slowly exhale through your mouth. I want you to notice how your body feels occupying your seat. Where is your back resting against the back of your chair? Where's your bottom on the seat? Maybe where are your legs touching the seat of the chair? Where are your arms and hands resting? And notice your feet on the floor. And just take a moment and just wiggle all your toes. Just notice all your toes. And all the while, just taking nice, slow, deep breaths. And I want you to notice if you are holding any tension anywhere in your body. Is it in your neck? Is your neck stiff? Shoulders? Maybe your abdomen feels tense. Just maybe even your legs feel tense. I want you to just pause for a moment and just notice the sensation of that tension. If you feel any tension anywhere in your body. And as you slowly breathe in and out, imagine that as you exhale, you're just releasing any of that tension. And it just evaporates into the air. And with more deep breaths, as you exhale, all that tension is just being released. Take a moment and notice any sounds that you can hear. Take a moment and identify the farthest away sound. And then notice the closest sound. And take another deep, slow breath in through your nose. And exhale slowly through your mouth. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So how's everybody feeling? Anybody fall asleep?
I was
Hopefully
going to
not.
say time for bed.
Very close.
Did you feel a little more relaxed?
Yes, definitely.
Good, good. So again, that's something that you can do. Now, one thing I want to just share with you quickly. So we talked about different ways that you could do these PQ reps, and especially when you're feeling the negative emotions in the moment. It's also a really great practice to start your morning with PQ reps, because when you do this, you're actually putting your mindset in that positive frame so that when challenges arise throughout the day, you are in a more positive headspace, so you're better equipped to navigate them. So what is one of the first things you do in the morning when you wake up?
Stretch.
Stretch?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Well, what I encourage you to do is turn those stretches into PQ reps. And just when you're stretching, just notice, the tension and the release as you shift and you stretch. What's something else that you do first thing in the morning? Anybody?
Drink water.
Drink water. Okay. So as you're drinking your water, notice the temperature. Maybe, pace yourself as you're with your breath as you swallow. Just really pay attention to the sound as you're drinking the water. If you go to the bathroom after you're washing your hands afterwards, notice how the water and the soap feels as you're lathering your hands or as you're drying your hands. You could even notice how your feet feel on the floor as you're walking across the floor. But these are just things that you do throughout the day. So I encourage you throughout the day, whether you're feeling hijacked or not from saboteurs, think about how you can attach PQ reps to those things that you're already doing. And when you do them, think about how you could reward yourself for doing these PQ reps and being in a positive mindset. All right. I know we're almost out of time. And I want to quickly, before we close, if you all would take a moment and scan this QR code and take a short survey. And I want you to critique this presentation. And I apologize that it didn't get off to the best start with the technical issues, but you all have been really great. And I've had excellent feedback throughout the presentation. So I want to thank you for that. But critique the actual topic. Did you like it? What do you wish that I had talked more about? And then as a thank you, you're going to get that link to the saboteur assessment, and you're also going to get a free workbook. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds, and then I know we need to wrap up, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Actually, while y'all are doing that, I'm going to leave you with this last thought too, of the different mental fitness techniques that we talked about. Which ones can you use to navigate stress and maintain a positive mindset?